I'm just back from a week of diving in Grand Cayman. Fantastic spot to go diving and a great spot to do photography or video. Let's take a look at what gear I brought on this week-long trip. I'm Rob Scu, and I've worked for over 45 years as a still photographer, working with clients like Major League Baseball and the NFL. Now I've switched to shooting underwater video for other people's nature shows, and I've had a bit of success getting stuff used by the National Geographic Channel and the Disney Channel. Maybe some of these techniques will be useful to you and your underwater work, or show you what not to do. The first thing to talk about is the camera. I use the Sony A7SM3. My primary goal is to shoot video, and it's a great video setup. So the Sony A7SM3 is my camera, and I leave it set up for underwater. I don't use it on the surface at all. It's dedicated for underwater. So that's the first thing. The camera is the Sony A7SM3. Great for video. Now, my favorite lens is actually a Zeiss 18mm 2.8. So it's third party as far as Sony is concerned. It's not made by Sony, but it is made by Zeiss. 18mm f2.8. Now, you could get wider, and people are always wider is better. I just find that this is great because it doesn't distort, and I get close enough and it's wide enough, I think. So 18mm 2.8 by Zeiss, the Zeiss Distagon. So I brought two lenses on this trip. The main one I used is the Zeiss Distagon, but I also brought a Sony G Master 16-35 2.8. It's a new lens to me. And I only used it on the last day of diving. So I used the 18 all week, and then I wanted to try this on the last day. And I'm glad I only used it on the last day. It didn't work for me like I had hoped. I made a mistake, user error. But this ring turns the zoom ring on the lens when you turn the knob on the Aquatica underwater housing. Now my mistake was when I slipped this on, I moved the focus button from autofocus to manual focus. Now I have no capability to manually focus this underwater. I'm counting on the autofocus, and I've just turned it off. So although the sharks were swimming all around us, my stuff is all out of focus with this lens. I'm glad I only used it on the last day of diving. Now other things that I brought a couple of extra cards for the camera. I generally just leave them in and download and offload my files every day. I also brought 4 of the Sony Z batteries. 4 is too many, you don't need 4. You bring the charger, you've got 1 in the camera, that'll last you all day. Maybe switch them out at lunch if you really want to. And then the other one goes in the charger. I brought 4, 2 is plenty, 3 would be more than plenty. 4, you're just carrying extra weight. And then the final kind of camera accessory is this little blower. When I put the lens on, I just blow the dust away. I don't seem to have dust problems if I do that every time. So that's my goal when I put the lens on. And with the 18mm lens, I generally left it on all week. I can slide it in and out of the housing without taking the lens off with the 18. So that's the cameras. Now let's talk about the housings. Now this trip was down in Grand Cayman with Ocean Frontiers. That's the local dive group resort that we were staying at. There was 24 divers on the trip, 28 people in all. We used 2 dive boats, so there was about a dozen or so divers on your boat every day. So Ocean Frontiers did a fantastic job, and the group that I went with was a group from Float and Flag, which is in Burlington, Canada, and they arranged the trip and put it down. If you ever want to go on a dive trip, join one of theirs because they're fantastic. The camera housing that I'm using is the Aquaticadigital. Aquaticadigital is out of Montreal, Canada. And this one is kind of custom built for the A7SM3. You do need a little lens port extension with it. So with the 18mm, my favorite lens, I use one of the smaller rings, and with the larger 16-35 or maybe a 24-70 or a 12-24, larger physical lenses, you need a bit more of an extension on the port. So the housing, full featured. The dome, this is I think it's an 8 or an 8.5 inch acrylic dome. I have had scratches on it in the past, and you learn how to kind of smooth them out, grind them out with some cloths and some goop that you put on, and you rub it in, and then you switch to a finer goop and then a finer goop, and you can kind of work those scratches out. Hopefully you don't get scratches, but I have, and you have to work them out. So that's kind of the Aquaticadigital setup. with the lights, I'll talk about the lights in a second, but with the lights and the 18 mil, it's pretty well neutral buoyancy, although it tends to tip up a bit. If you take the lights off and you use the bigger lens, you've got more air in this and it's quite buoyant, so just something to be aware of. If you don't put lights on and you're using the big dome, it might be a little bit more buoyant than you're expecting, so you'll want to check that. So here's the housing, and I use 2 lights. So these are strobes and video lights. Made by Ikelite, these are the 161s. These are kind of a standard in the industry, full featured. You can control how much power they use. They'll TTL if you have TTL. Now the Aquatica housing doesn't have TTL, but some of my housings do. And I have a cord here that runs, this runs from the housing to the 2 flashes and it fires the flashes at the same time. I do have a little diffuser on here. I leave that on. And a couple of spare O-rings go in the bag. I've never replaced them in the field, but you'd want to have them if you need them. So this is the Ikelite strobe video light, and kind of an industrial standard. It is a little bit heavy, and this whole back part is the battery, snaps right off. You could have extra batteries if you wanted to, and you were running out of battery power. I just have 1 per unit. Okay, so now as you can see, I've got the arms on. These are the regular arms and a regular clamp. So you need 2 arms per side if you're going to do this giant crab type look, and so you need 4 arms altogether, and you need 6 of the clamps. And the clamps join it to the camera, to the housing, join the 2 arms together, and then you need another clamp for the light itself. So, and the arms and clamps come in different sizes. I've got longer arms and shorter arms. I normally use the standard ones, but if I was just going to put 1 arm on for some reason, I might use a larger one, a longer one. So you have to kind of see this as a giant crab, and you've got adjustable lighting here. You can put the lights where you want them, and then you'd have a duplicate set over here on this side. I usually do dive with the lights, even though a lot of times I leave the lights off. So at night dive, I'm totally using the video lights and the flash. I'm setting my camera to a daylight flash setting for the white balance. But a lot of times I don't turn the lights on, I leave them off. I'm shooting with ambient light, doing a standard white balance at depth. And I only bring the lights in case I have to shoot in a cavern, or there's an overhang on the wall, something I really want to have lights for because it's too dark. So I bring the lights every dive, but I generally don't use the lights for most dives. Except a night dive, of course, you're going to need the lights. Now this is the final part of the setup. I took the PADI photography course years ago, and they give you this laminated plastic gray card. And I bring it on all my dives. I actually just kind of clip it on here to one of the arms and let it dangle there. And I do a white balance against the gray card, a manual set white balance to clean up the color, and I do that at about 20 feet. I start to do it, and every 10 feet or so I do a new white balance. So I'm anal about the white balance. I'm setting it all the time. People who dive with me, they're probably annoyed that I'm setting my white balance all the time. I literally, get the camera ready to set it, and I just reach out with the gray card part up, and I set the white balance. And I do that a lot. I'm really trying to have clean looking color without the lights. Now, if I turn the lights on, that white balance card that I just set is wrong, and I've got to go to more of a daylight or flash setting for the white balance. So I do use the gray card a lot. I bring it with me. It's a pain. Some people stick it in their pocket. I just clamp it on. Some people use the sand at the bottom to do a white balance, and other people use the gray tank to do a white balance. I've just found it most convenient just to kind of bring this along with me. It's a little bit anal, I think, but I'm trying to get as clean a white balance as I can. I do shoot in RAW. I do shoot in S-Log in video, but I'm just trying to get a great starting point that's pretty clean. So that's my setup. 2 lights, Aquatica housing. Lights are made by Ikelite. They're fantastic. They cable into the housing. I fire the camera, the flashes fire, or I have them set up for video. I use the Sony A7SM3 with usually a Zeiss 18mm Distagon lens. It all goes in a great big Pelican case and checked luggage. I generally bring the camera, the main lens, any batteries, and my regulators in my carry-on luggage. Everything else goes in the Pelican case and gets shipped on the plane. I hope you're having a great dive season. Hopefully some of these techniques might be useful to you in your own underwater photography, underwater videography.